Welcome to Threads of Truth, a podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we examine the baffling disappearance of a young man from the heart of a major university campus, a case that has refused to give up its secrets for over 2.5 decades.
It's the ultimate unsettling scenario, isn't it? I mean, the scene is Dexter Hall at UCLA, a quiet, supposedly secure freshman dormitory.
Right.
It's the early hours of December 10th, 1999. An 18-year-old student named Michael Negrete steps out briefly, intending to congratulate a friend on winning a video game. He walks back toward his room and simply vanishes.
And that's the core question that just continues to haunt this case. How does a person surrounded by peers and confined within the physical boundaries of a large, secure institution cease to exist?
Exactly. He wasn't on some remote hiking trail or lost in a sprawling wilderness.
No, he was essentially home on the 6th floor of a university dorm.
And the initial facts are what make this case so immediately suspicious to law enforcement. Michael was a music major, a talented trumpet player, and a freshman with defined plans, namely, going home for winter break in 5 days.
And he left everything.
Everything. He left behind every single thing he needed to sustain his existence. His keys, his wallet, his identification, and his primary shoes. This was not a planned exit.
No, this was an emergency, a sudden opportunity, or an immediate act of coercion. And because the facts so strongly suggested he was either met with foul play instantly or died and was quickly removed, the police, they upgraded the case very fast.
Right, from a routine missing person report to a homicide inquiry.
That is a truly telling signal, I think.
Yeah.
Especially considering there was no physical evidence of a struggle. Nothing.
Our mission today is to walk through that critical timeline to really dissect the confusing and often contradictory investigative leads. We're talking about an alleged bloodhound trail that was later discredited and a deeply suspicious, unidentified man seen inside the secured dorm.
And from there, we'll unpack the competing theories. From a peer cover-up after an accidental overdose to a secretive external rendezvous gone fatally wrong, theories that continue to fuel speculation decades later.
We want to synthesize all the sources you've shared with us and give you the clearest picture possible of what we know and perhaps more importantly, what we don't.
Okay, so let's get into this tragic night by starting with Michael Negrete himself. I think we really need to understand the individual who vanished, because every data point we have suggests he was not looking to run away.
Absolutely not. Michael was a young man just beginning his life. Born in March 1981, he was 18 years old and by all accounts thriving at UCLA on a music scholarship.
Music scholarship, right?
Yeah, and sources consistently describe him as popular, energetic, and gifted, particularly with the trumpet. He played for a campus band called Island Fever.
And alongside his passion for jazz, he was, a typical late 90s college student, deeply into online video games.
He had a busy schedule that night, December 9th, 1999, leading up to his disappearance in the early morning of the 10th. It was finals week, so a stressful time, but also a time for celebration.
A lot of energy on campus.
A lot of energy, yeah. The final hours of his confirmed timeline are extremely tight. He attended a concert earlier in the evening, and then later, a party held on his floor, the 6th floor of Dexter Hall.
Now, Dexter Hall, for people who don't know, it's one of UCLA's high-rise residential buildings.
Yeah.
It's a maze of hallways and, identical rooms.
So he returned to his room and settled in. The last sustained activity we can track is him playing an online video game. It was played via the internet with a hallmate who is located in a separate room on the same floor.
This use of the internet is just such a classic snapshot of 1999 college life. Pre-broadband saturation.
It really is. The game, which some sources suggest may have been Quake or a similar first-person shooter, ended around 4:00 a.m. on Friday, December 10th. And this is the absolute pivot point. Michael, ever the good sport, left his room to walk down the hall and congratulate his friend who had won.
And that friend, who we only know as a hallmate, is the last person who definitively saw Michael. He watched Michael turn and walk back in the direction of his own room on the 6th floor.
That 4 a.m. sighting is the hard stop. The next confirmed time marker is 5 hours later at 9 a.m. when Michael's roommate woke up. The roommate found Michael's bed hadn't been slept in and Michael was gone.
But the immediate shock wasn't just that he was gone, it was what was left behind. Let's really hammer this home for you because it dictates the entire subsequent investigation.
You're right. He abandoned his wallet, which contained all his cash and bank cards, his keys, which meant he couldn't get back into the dorm,
Couldn't get back in.
his student ID, which was necessary for campus access and identity, his favorite clothing and primary shoes, and his valuable musical instruments, which were central to his scholarship and his passion.
He was a scholarship student.
Yeah.
Leaving his trumpet behind is like a professional athlete leaving their essential gear. It just screams that this was not voluntary, or at the very least, it was an extremely sudden and short-term action.
He didn't even take clothing appropriate for the Los Angeles chill at 4 a.m.
And we know definitively he had plans.
Absolutely. Just hours before he vanished, he had sent an email to his mother, Mary Negrete, confirming his travel plans to return home to San Diego on December 15th for the winter break. He wasn't estranged, he wasn't rebellious,
Nah.
and he certainly wasn't about to intentionally abandon his life 5 days before Christmas.
So the alarm bells went off pretty quickly. He missed his morning classes, and crucially, he missed scheduled final exams.
Yeah.
For a scholarship student, missing finals isn't just a small oversight. It's catastrophic.
And this is what immediately triggered the campus police response. Investigators found no evidence to suggest depression, alcohol issues, serious financial problems, or enemies. There was no documented secret life that would warrant a sudden voluntary disappearance.
So all the typical reasons for someone to just leave they weren't there.
Not at all. And so the total circumstances, the abandoned essentials, the missed obligations, the sudden exit led law enforcement to conclude immediately that foul play was involved. And that's why you get the swift upgrade to a homicide investigation, despite the complete lack of physical evidence of a struggle on the 6th floor.
That quick upgrade, even without a body or blood, it just tells you how much weight investigators gave to the idea that his departure was forced or maybe accidental, followed by an immediate cover-up.
Right. It signals they believed the crime occurred, likely nearby, and the evidence was efficiently removed by someone with access or knowledge of the campus.
And that belief that the crime was internal colored every subsequent investigation detail, which is why the contradictory evidence we're about to discuss is so frustrating.
It really is.
This case is just absolutely riddled with what we might call informational static details that initially seem crucial, maybe even sensational, but which ultimately lead investigators nowhere.
And that confuses the public and, critically, it diverts limited investigative resources.
The first and surprisingly pivotal puzzle surrounds his footwear.
It's an excellent example of how a small piece of information can be misinterpreted. Initial reports really sensationalized the fact that Michael, who reportedly had a very strong, almost OCD-level aversion to walking barefoot, had left without his main pair of shoes.
Right. And that led the public and some early investigators to conclude he was snatched from his room or under duress, maybe even forced out barefoot.
Exactly. Which would imply the perpetrator was already inside his room or lying in wait right outside, knowing he couldn't take time to lace up. It paints a picture of extreme duress.
But that wasn't the whole story.
No. Later, clarification emerged. Investigators determined that he had, in fact, taken a second pair of footwear with him. These were likely slip-on shoes, flip-flops or shower shoes.
The kind of thing you wear around the dorm.
The kind you use for a very short, quick trip, perhaps to the bathroom, the laundry room, or significantly just outside the building door.
That slight detail dramatically shifts the narrative, doesn't it? If he wore slip-ons, his departure changes from an unhinged wandering or a violent abduction scenario to something more like a discreet, short, and potentially pre-planned meeting.
It does. He was geared up for a quick 15-minute excursion, not a planned walk across campus or across town. It opens up the possibility of a voluntary exit to meet someone just outside the dorm's perimeter.
Which aligns much better with some of the other highly contested evidence.
Especially the scent trail we'll get to. Had he been completely barefoot, the cover-up theory becomes almost inevitable. With slip-ons, a secret rendezvous becomes viable.
But if we set aside the confusion of the shoe detail, we are left with the one truly chilling piece of human testimony, the unidentified man. This is an investigative lead that should have been explosive, but, well, it became inert due to the time lag.
This man is a major person of interest. But it was 7 months after Michael's disappearance that a UCLA student finally came forward, reporting they had seen a suspicious adult male inside Dykstra Hall on the night Michael vanished.
7 months. Let's just sit with that for a second. That's a huge gap.
It's a huge gap. But let's go over the specifics because they're really unnerving in context. The witness described him as a white male, approximately 35 years old, with a heavy build. And crucially, he was spotted hovering on the Michael's floor at approximately 4:35 a.m.
That's a mere 35 minutes after Michael was last definitively seen walking back toward his room.
An unaccounted for adult male, almost 2 decades older than the residents, lurking in a freshman dorm hallway at 4:30 in the morning is highly, highly suspicious. The police released a composite sketch, but the man never came forward.
So the challenge here is that 7-month delay. Why did the student wait so long? Were they scared? Did they only realize the significance later?
It's hard to say. The delay undeniably casts a shadow of doubt on the accuracy of the memory, even if the general description is correct. But the police took it seriously enough to issue a public sketch.
And his presence demands an explanation. How did a non-student, non-residential life staff member get into a supposedly secure dorm in the middle of the night?
It forces us to confront the security gaps even in 1999. While Dykstra Hall theoretically required an ID swipe after hours and often had staff at the desk, those systems were fallible.
Absolutely.
A determined person could tailgate slip in right behind a legitimate resident. Or perhaps he was, as one source suggested, mistaken for or impersonating residential life staff.
Or the worst possibility, of course, is that he was let in by a resident.
Maybe Michael himself or someone he was meeting.
Yeah.
If he was let in by Michael, that points directly back to the rendezvous theory. If he was let in by a different student, that points back to the cover-up theory that someone else facilitated his presence and that student is now silent.
We'll come back to that, man. But let's shift to another confusing element that consumes so much investigative effort: the dubious scent trail.
Right. So LAPD bloodhounds, a traditional, highly relied upon piece of evidence in missing person cases, were deployed early on.
And where did they lead?
They tracked Michael's scent from Dykstra Hall for about 0.7 miles, a walk of roughly 15 minutes, to a bus stop located at Sunset Boulevard and Bellagio Drive. The trail ended abruptly right there.
So the immediate inference is clear. Michael walked there, and then he either boarded a bus or entered a waiting vehicle.
Exactly. This gave investigators a focal point, a potential crime scene or abduction site. They interviewed every bus driver and possible passenger on that route at that hour, but absolutely no one could place Michael on a bus.
Which suggests he likely entered a private vehicle.
It does. However, the critical piece of information here is the counter-analysis. Investigators subsequently suggested the dogs may have been confused, essentially discrediting their own lead.
Why? Why, after investing resources in following the dogs, would they backtrack and label the scent trail dubious?
Because of the principle of odor concentration versus temporal priority. See, Michael did not have a car on campus, so he would have routinely walked those 15 minutes to that exact bus stop to use public transportation. When a bloodhound is given a sample scent, it tracks the path with the strongest concentration of that odor. It doesn't know when that odor was laid down.
Oh, I see. So the dogs may have accurately tracked Michael's previous path to the bus stop, a normal, routine walk he had taken dozens of times, rather than tracking his final journey on December 10th.
That's the idea. The strong scent of repeated trips likely overpowered any faint single-trip scent from 4:00 a.m. that morning. The consensus, particularly in retrospect, is that the scent trail was likely a red herring.
Evidence of his normal routine, not his final destination.
Exactly. And this case becomes a textbook example of how contradictory leads guarantee a cold case. The moment you discredit the scent trail, the bus stop ceases to be a central location.
And that leaves the suspicious man on the 6th floor as the only piece of actionable, albeit delayed, human evidence. Let's return to the security context, because understanding the technology of 1999 is key to understanding the investigational gaps.
It's crucial. For you listening today, it's hard to imagine a major university campus without high-resolution CCTV covering every entrance and hallway. But Dykstra Hall itself lacked comprehensive surveillance cameras.
Really? None in the dorms?
The university had cameras in places where cash was handled, like parking services, but dormitories were still very low-tech. We're talking about an access system that relied heavily on magnetic stripe ID cards, a technology that was notoriously easy to replicate or defeat, and human staff vigilance.
So the system was only as strong as the person sitting at the desk.
Yes. As we mentioned, bypassing security by tailgating was a common student practice. The possibility exists that the suspicious man simply followed a returning student in, or that he posed as a delivery driver or maintenance worker. This reliance on low-tech security means there is no video record of Michael leaving the building and no video record of the suspicious man entering or exiting.
And compounding this technical failure is the claim surrounding Michael's computer. This speaks to a potential failure in evidence preservation.
This is a devastating anecdotal failure reported in the source material. The claim that Michael's computer hard drive, which may have contained electronic communications, was accidentally corrupted or erased during the investigation.
Wow.
To lose the digital trail, the only possible lead on motive, that must have been devastating for the original investigators.
How common was that kind of data loss back in 1999?
In the earliest days of digital forensics, it was unfortunately more common. Techniques were rudimentary, and well-meaning but inexperienced officers might unintentionally compromise the data. If Michael was lured away via an online chat, maybe AIM or ICQ, the popular messengers at the time, that hard drive held the only direct evidence of why he chose to put on slip-ons and leave at 4 a.m.
And if the drive was ruined, that critical digital conversation vanished forever.
Forever. So despite the comprehensive physical search, sending a person down the garbage chute, checking all construction sites, and over 500 submitted leads, the combined effect of the delayed witness, the unreliable scent trail, and the technical failures created a vacuum.
And this void is why the case persists, and why the public theories have become the lasting narrative.
Exactly. The ultimate synthesis of this case is that every piece of evidence is self-canceling. We have no body, no confirmed crime scene, and no confirmed motive. This guarantees perpetual speculation.
So let's dedicate some serious time to the main arguments put forward to solve this mystery, understanding that these are unproven speculations driven by the psychological need for closure.
We have 3 paths that attempt to explain the total removal of an 18-year-old from a secure environment. Each theory relies on specific, often selective reading of the meager facts.
Okay, let's start with theory 1, the one most often associated with college disappearances: accidental death or overdose and a subsequent cover-up by peers.
The core idea here is that Michael died inside the dorm or immediately outside, perhaps from an adverse drug reaction, a sudden collapse, or an accidental fall while intoxicated. He would have been in the company of other students who panicked.
And the fear of legal trouble, especially if illicit substances were involved, compelled them to dispose of the body secretly to protect their own careers and futures.
Right. The facts supporting this are pretty compelling. The quick, unplanned nature of Michael's exit, leaving all his essentials, supports the idea that he was responding to an urgent situation. Perhaps a distressed friend calling him back to their room or another nearby location because something had gone wrong.
And didn't police questioning raise some suspicion about the other students?
It did. Some investigators felt that students on Michael's floor knew more than they were admitting. The consensus of silence, the blue wall effect among peers, is a well-documented phenomenon in these situations. The consequences for them, if drugs were involved, could have been expulsion and criminal charges.
If an accidental death occurred in a dorm room, how complex would the logistics of a cover-up be? I mean, we're talking about the 6th floor of a major building, not an isolated cabin.
The logistics are incredibly difficult, which is why this theory requires multiple participants and a lot of luck. However, during finals week, people are coming and going at all hours. They could have used the service elevators or the stairs in the wee hours.
And the construction site theory ties in here too.
It does. If the body was quickly concealed in a nearby construction dumpster or buried under fresh concrete, the evidence is immediately gone. And though police searched the construction sites, the search would have been complicated by the sheer size and activity of a large campus.
You mentioned parallels to other cases like Lauren Spirer. How does the psychology of that cover-up work?
It's the combination of immaturity and high stakes. At 18 or 19, these students are technically adult, but they are highly dependent on their university and career trajectory.
Right.
So the idea of an accidental overdose or drug involvement, even if they were only witnesses, is enough to make the fear of prosecution exponentially larger than the moral obligation to report a death. They prioritize self-preservation. Silence in this context is seen as the ultimate protection.
That makes the silence a necessary component of the theory. If one person panicked, they needed 3 or 4 friends to agree to the lifelong pact of silence.
Exactly. And that silence is what makes this the most persistent internal theory.
Okay, let's pivot to theory 2. Drug-related abduction or foul play. This is supported by information that came directly from Michael's family years later.
This emerged in 2013 when Michael's brother, Steve Negrete, revealed that Michael had begun attending raves and experimenting with ecstasy, or X, in the months leading up to his disappearance. This context fundamentally changes our understanding of Michael's possible activities at 4:00 a.m.
This feeds a very specific scenario. Michael left the dorm to engage in a late-night drug transaction. He could have arranged to meet a dealer for a transaction near that remote bus stop, the endpoint of the confusing scent trail.
Right. The bus stop suddenly looks less like a place he was dropped off and more like a prearranged meeting spot outside the controlled environment of the dorm. If he was under the influence, or if he was attempting to purchase drugs in an unsupervised setting, the risk of a spontaneous crime, a robbery, an argument, or being picked up by a nefarious individual increases significantly.
His brother had a specific idea about this, didn't he?
He did. His brother's theory was that Michael, perhaps high, left the building and was picked up by one of those people your mother warned you about.
But if he was meeting a regular dealer, wouldn't the dealer want to avoid a homicide charge? It's bad for business.
Absolutely. That's the standard critique. A planned professional deal rarely ends in murder. However, this theory relies on a spontaneous act of violence. Maybe he was meeting a middleman or a highly unstable individual or someone who didn't intend to deal but to rob him.
A crime of opportunity.
Exactly. Given the surge in ATM-related robberies in LA in the 90s, where an abductor might demand a quick withdrawal before disposal, it's not outside the realm of possibility that Michael was targeted for a quick score after leaving the protective shell of the dorm.
And this theory explains why he left everything behind, his keys, ID, wallet inside, because he only needed the cash he was carrying, and he planned to return swiftly. It only requires a brief voluntary exit and some very bad luck.
It connects his actions, the quick exit with slip-ons, to the highly contested bus stop location. It is a geographically complete theory, even if the violence aspect relies on chance.
Which brings us to our third major theory, which shifts the focus entirely to his personal, perhaps hidden life, a secret sexual rendezvous gone wrong.
This theory attempts to integrate the suspicious man seen on the 6th floor with the need for extreme discretion. The scenario posits that Michael, potentially closeted given the social climate of 1999, an era where acceptance was far less widespread than today, arranged a late-night hookup.
And since this is before modern dating apps, this hookup would likely have been arranged via an early internet messenger like AIM or ICQ, or perhaps a prearranged bulletin board meeting. This connects right back to the tragic hard drive corruption, doesn't it?
Entirely. If the hard drive held those messages, this theory is either proven or disproven instantly. Assuming the messages existed, the rendezvous would require maximum discretion. Why would he meet at 4 a.m. far from Dextra Hall, perhaps at the bus stop landmark?
Because he wouldn't want to meet someone unknown, especially an older male, near his dorm where he could be spotted by friends, staff, or his roommate.
And the connection to the unidentified 35-year-old man seen on his floor is undeniable here. That older man seen lurking at 4:35 a.m. could have been the individual Michael was planning to meet.
Or a predator.
Or a predatory individual who gained access to the dorm, saw Michael leave in his quick shoes, and followed him out to take advantage of his vulnerability. The possibility of Michael being lured away by someone significantly older, perhaps using the internet to target younger men seeking discretion, fits the profile of many missing persons cases from that era.
This theory explains the rush. He was just going for a quick secret meeting and intended to be back before dawn, and the silence from his inner circle, as he would have been protecting a deeply personal secret about his sexuality.
It's a powerful theory because it explains the motive for the immediate, unplanned exit better than the others. Both the drug deal and the rendezvous theories explain the slip-on shoes and the lack of essentials. The cover-up theory explains the body disposal and the student's silence.
And the truth may very well be a catastrophic intersection of 2 or even all 3 of these possibilities.
It could be.
When we synthesize these facts, the power of this case lies in how a person could vanish from a location that is, by definition, meant to be safe and controlled. The unsettling security breach is what makes this case resonate so widely.
Disappearances from high security, controlled areas violate our fundamental trust in institutional safety. Michael leaving behind the necessities required for getting back in, his ID card and his keys, is the defining feature.
It's the thing you can't get past.
It really is. It screams of a situation that did not allow for a return, whether due to immediate coercion or immediate incapacitation.
And the fact that he was seen walking back to his room suggests that the threat or opportunity arose right near his room, or perhaps he was intercepted in the common area of the 6th floor or the immediate stairwell.
Or, as we discussed with the rendezvous theory, he changed his mind about returning and doubled back out the door, moving swiftly to the planned meeting location. It forces us to reflect on the limitations of late 1990s campus security.
A system reliant on human vigilance.
Exactly. The ultimate lesson learned is visible in modern university security. The subsequent installation of comprehensive CCTV cameras and the transition to high-security keycard access in all dorms at UCLA speaks directly to the painful lessons learned from Michael's vanishing. It highlighted a systemic vulnerability.
The other element that has complicated this case for decades is just the role of uncertainty. We have a vanishing that is built on conflicting evidence that constantly cancels itself out. The lack of a body means definitive closure is impossible.
The scent trail was discredited, rendering the bus stop irrelevant. The key witness identification of the older man was delayed by months, rendering it less actionable and potentially unreliable.
And the claimed catastrophic loss of the most critical piece of digital evidence.
This self-canceling information is the blueprint for a permanent cold case. It creates a situation ripe for perpetual speculation, rumor, and sometimes unfortunate fabrications. It's why the case has entered popular culture, even inspiring a CSI Las Vegas episode called Chaos Theory.
Right. Which dramatized the possibility of a body ending up far away via the campus infrastructure. And while the police confirm they searched the Dykstra Hall garbage chute, the fictional scenario reflects how compelling the idea of a vanishing in a controlled, sealed environment is to the public imagination.
We want the answer to be physical and simple when often it is deeply psychological and rooted in human betrayal. And no amount of speculation replaces the hard truth that the family is left with enduring anguish. We can't talk about this case without mentioning the family's legacy and the significant impact they had on policy.
The Negrete family, led by Michael's mother, Mary Negrete, fought tirelessly for years. They hired multiple private detectives, offered a substantial $100,000 reward for information,
Which remains unclaimed. That suggests that either the person responsible never needed the money, or that the secret is held by people more afraid of the legal consequences than they are motivated by cash.
And Mary Negrete took her profound grief and transformed it into meaningful political action. She became a key advocate for Kristen's Act, or H.R. 2780.
This legislation was named in honor of Kristen Madafari, another student who vanished just after her 18th birthday. And it was critical because in 1999, if you were 18, you were legally classified as an adult who wasn't considered reliant on your family for survival.
Which drastically limited the federal assistance and national databases that were available to locate them.
Kristen's Act aimed to expand federal assistance and national databases, specifically expanding the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to include missing persons between the ages of 18 and 21. Mary Negrete's advocacy highlighted this systemic gap. That is a powerful and lasting legacy born directly from her son's loss.
So if we pull back and try to synthesize all the factors, the quick departure with only slip-ons, the older suspicious man, the discredited bus stop, and the complete code of silence, what is the most probable scenario given the sources we have?
When we explore the viability of the theories, we have to look at what is hardest to disprove. The drug-related foul play and the rendezvous theories require Michael to leave voluntarily, which is plausible given the slip-ons, but it requires an external element to silence him. The cover-up theory requires internal knowledge and an extremely complex removal and disposal of the body.
And what's fascinating here is that the suspicious man and the potential for a peer cover-up are not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely not. The man could have been the rendezvous partner. If the rendezvous went fatally wrong and Michael was killed by this outside party, perhaps one of the students saw the incident or saw the man leaving with Michael under duress. Their subsequent silence could be rooted in fear of the killer, rather than fear of prosecution for an accidental death.
So the ultimate failure of the investigation was the inability to break that silence, whether it came from fear, guilt, or self-preservation.
I think so. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the most persistent, disturbing truth in this case is the ongoing silence. It is not the lack of evidence outside the dorm that defines this case, but the possibility that multiple people inside Dykstra Hall know precisely what happened.
Whether they witnessed an accidental death, an overdose, or saw him leave with the unidentified man.
And for 26 years have chosen to keep that traumatic secret buried. The ability of a group of young people to maintain total silence for decades, even as their lives and consciences evolve, is the only way this profound mystery can endure in such a confined space.
It leaves us with the painful truth that even the most familiar, controlled spaces can hold the deepest, darkest secrets.
Indeed, it's a profound thought for you to mull over. What psychological pressure is strong enough to keep a terrible truth locked away for decades?
That concludes our examination of the disappearance of Michael Negrete. Thank you for exploring the complexity of this haunting, unresolved case with us. Next on Threads of Truth, we turn to one of the most haunting family mysteries in American history, the Sodder children, who vanished after a house fire in 1945, leaving behind ashes, unanswered questions, and a mystery that refuses to fade.